People are coming in. My name is Kathy Orlando. I work as the International Outreach Manager at Citizens Climate Lobby, and I support volunteers in 60 countries in building political will for carbon pricing, or whatever makes the most sense in their country, wherever their starting point is. And I can tell you the work that we've done in Canada has really paved the way. So thank you, everyone, for the work that you're doing. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. I am calling in from the traditional lands of the Atikamekw First Nations. They are Anishinaabe people. They used to be called Ojibwe, or maybe they still are, but Anishinaabe is what they are called now. And also on the lands of the Huron-Robinson Treaty Territory. When you do a land acknowledgement, it's more than just words. It's also a commitment to be a good settler ally. So if you feel comfortable, also acknowledging your land in which you are coming from, and please feel free to put your name, your city, and the traditional territories in the chat box so we can get to know each other. We're in for a very exciting evening tonight. Tonight's evening we'll open up with a dear friend, Angie Nussey. She's also from Sudbury, but she lives in Aurelia, and she's going to open up with a song. I met Angie, and when this work gets a little difficult for me, she's one of my go-to CDs. I still listen to CDs. So Angie, thank you for being here tonight. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I am thrilled to be here today and to play a song for you guys again. I'm sure I've met many of you, but if I haven't, hello, friends. Nice to see you tonight. It has been a really interesting year for all of us. I'm a person who, I love music, but my second love is to study spirituality. And so I've always been just researching different things, and I really, what I find really interesting right now is this very clear understanding about heart space and how our hearts actually emit a frequency, and what we're feeling will dictate what that frequency is. So they can measure it. I can't remember how far they can measure it, like with I think it's like 90 meters that they can measure this heart frequency, but they can it's only because the instrumentation allows up to 90 meters, whereas they actually think that this heart frequency can travel much, much further than that. And so what I've come to learn about myself, being a very, I guess you'd call me an empath, I'm highly affected by everything. I can feel change in the air. I can feel it all around the world, and it affects me. I'm learning now that I think the superpower that we've been given as humans is to learn to manage our own energy so that our hearts can emit this frequency that ends up helping us all evolve. And so when COVID happened, it was quite dramatic for everyone, including myself. But I had this sudden feeling that there was something that had to change massively in order for us to really skyrocket into this new evolution of human. And so I've found even lately, I meet people and they've been changed because of their environment. You know, you can't drive your fancy car and show off your fancy clothes anymore. You have to sit still right now, and it's happening to so many people, and we're changing dramatically, and it's torturous for some of us, and I can understand that, but I think it's just part of our journey right now, and it's pretty exciting. So this is a song that isn't recorded anywhere. I wrote it, I guess I wrote it in June, and it's about taking accountability for our heart space and really pushing to make ourselves feel as best we can in every moment. It doesn't have to be phenomenal, crazy joy or anything like that, just whatever level we can get to within ourselves. It's called Start First. Silence has come in this hour of need, just in the nick of time, when we were down on our knees. If you find yourself longing for everyone to be free, start first with you, and I'll start first with me. Can't play the fool, we've known this for years. Watching the truth through the lens of our fear. If we lay down what we think we need, it starts first with you. And it starts first with me. We are not broken. We are not lost. We are just growing, and there is a cost. We hold the wisdom to forgive and release, but it starts first with you, and it starts first with me. Silence has come in this hour of need to give us space, to let us grieve. When we are ready, we'll move toward peace. But it starts first with you, and it starts first with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie. That was beautiful.
No
I
problem.
hope you can see all the beautiful hands and smiles and my tears. So we now move on to the workshop. Just as my husband was coming in the door with the groceries. This is being an activist in the 21st during COVID. It's right there. Okay, thank you, and thanks for laughing. Tonight, I am pleased to introduce another person I have known, maybe not for over a decade, but for a few years now, Dr. Renee Lertzman. I remember the first time I saw her work, it spoke to me. And I just want to quickly share a story how when in June 2016, when Citizens Climate Lobby started lobbying the new parliament that formed after the 2015 election, Dr. Lertzman or Renee guided us through this workshop, and I just felt myself transform. And she came in again in November of that year to work with us again. And I'm so glad she's back, because she really truly straddles that world between psychology and climate. And really, it's a lot of the work we have to do is up here. And I know I'm not reading from my notes, I'm reading from my heart right now. And I just want to say I am so pleased that Renee is here with us tonight. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Okay, over to me. Okay, all right. Gosh, that was really incredible. I'm so moved by the music and what was shared with the music. So thank you again for that. And thank you, Kathy, for inviting me. It's a very deep honor for me to work with you and to work with Citizens Climate Lobby. And it's, I feel like with CCL, like, we talk about kindred spirits and, when we think about people in our lives, but CCL in a way is such a kindred spirit of an organization, because what you all are about is really, it's really where I see the work needing to be, which is about citizens engaging with other citizens and representatives. And so just at the essence of what the organization is about, I just feel so much resonance and support and appreciation for what you do and the challenges of what you've stepped into, so I'd like to start following on what Angie just opened up for us, which was, really being our full selves. Would like to start with one way of arriving is to share where we are right now. So Kathy, would you be able to share the link to the word cloud?
Yep, I just got to shut off my video and go over to my other computer. I'll be right.
So one of the things I like to do when convening with groups, whether it's in person or online, is just do sort of a temperature check of where we are right now. And so there's a link in the chat to the poll. It's actually a word cloud. And the prompt is, it looks like first you put your name in. And then the prompt is, how are you feeling right now in your work on climate? And can you share the screen, Kathy, so we can see what's coming?
Yep, it's coming. I'll just be a moment. Thanks.
Okay, how are we feeling about our work on climate right now? Right? It's an interesting word. Aimless, hopeful, slowed, optimistic, inadequate. disengaged, better, listening. Okay, I'm going to take a quick grab of this. All right. So what I want us to do just in watching the reflection of where we all are right now, just notice what it's like to take stock and see where we are as a group right now. And just notice what it's like in your body, in your system, to just see and take in where we are and the range of where we are. Just notice that. No judging, just how is it landing with you? Is it changing you at all to see this? Okay, and we go on to the next prompt, please. Thanks.
It's my first time doing it, so just give me a second, please.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay. And I can see what you're doing now. Thank you, everyone. Another actions. All right. Have another. Okay. And okay. Dismiss.
Nope. If there's not another prompt queued up, let's move on. We can move on.
Yeah, I'll queue it up in a minute. Sorry about that. I'm still learning this tech. Thanks for your patience.
No problem. Okay. So what I want to just start by kind of as a level set and to orient you to how we're going to be spending our time is just to share with you, and some of you have been on workshops and sessions with me, so some of what I'm sharing is not going to be new, and I recognize some faces and names. Hi, David. Right on. So one of the first things I want to introduce is simply to situate the work that we do on climate change as inherently emotional and very psychologically and socially very complicated. And it's very simple what I'm saying and signaling here, but it's quite profound. And the reason why is because what I notice is a lot of us working on climate change and environmental issues in general, sometimes we get sort of disconnected from remembering and keeping in mind that these issues are actually very emotionally fraught and very complicated for a variety of reasons and for infinite ways for infinite numbers of people. So why is this important to remember and to keep in mind that this is emotional is because, feelings are a vital part of how we as humans relate with the world and how we make sense of the world and how we perceive threats and how we understand and kind of interpret the threats and make decisions. So my basic premise for you all and for us together and what I'd like to guide us through in the time that we have is what does it look like and mean to do our climate work through the lens of really taking this on board and not pushing it away, but just seeing, just recognizing this is part of the picture. And how do we therefore really support and show up for ourselves and for each other and for those that we are seeking to work with. One of the prompts that I like to use is, I invite us to think about, what do you see your work as being about? And it's a really interesting reflection. Some of you might see your work as being about trying to motivate people, trying to persuade, maybe educate is a big part of it because you are CCL after all, and you know a lot. And so a lot of what you might imagine work on climate is about educating people about not only the issues and the threats, but the solutions and the why of why we need to do what we need to do. Some of you may feel that you have to be storytellers, lobbyists, it's in the name. And so all of these ways of thinking about the way that we do our climate work are really important because they signal the ways in which we are showing up for ourselves, but primarily with others. And so I want to invite us to take a step back and actually rethink some of these ways that we're used to seeing what we do, and to really consider, how can we be showing up for those that we have the hardest time working with, that we feel the most frustration with, impatience, anger, all of that. How can we actually show up, and how do we do this work more effectively through that lens? So I'm really approaching this as a conversation. As what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk you through some level setting, and then we're gonna do an activity and talk with one another, and then have a chance to have some discussion, a debrief, and then I'll talk some more, and we'll just kind of go like that. If you have any questions you want to ask at any point, please just go ahead and throw it in the chat, and I'll do my best to notice. Or Kathy, if you see someone raising their hand or asking a question, again, this isn't a huge number, and we can be conversational. So I'm going to share my slides here. And also, Kathy, I'm noticing, oh, I guess you're letting people in because I'm getting the notifications too. Okay. All right. So I asked Kathy, what are some of the things that are coming up for you all right now? And so I just want to kind of situate the context that we're in, that we have, this is a paraphrasing, but, we've got these kind of rural city tensions and divides that can develop. We've got the Supreme Court challenge happening, climate accountability laws, Indigenous peoples are not feeling or are not being heard, and rural people are not feeling heard and feel dominated by the city. So that's kind of a context that we're in right now. And so one of the things that I notice in these contexts is it has a lot to do with people basically feeling unheard, and that there's been there's somewhat of a breakdown in terms of how able are we to actually connect and have meaningful interactions and conversations when the stakes are very, very high. Because it's at times that stakes are high that it's really the hardest to slow down and have the kinds of interactions and conversations that we need to move change. So we're sort of in a paradoxical, I think of climate crisis as the ultimate human paradox in terms of who we are socially and psychologically and emotionally and mentally, which as the stakes go high, our tendency is to get contracted. And so really the work that we have ahead of us is to continually be looking at, how do we manage ourselves, and how do we show up again with each other and with ourselves in a way that brings us more into balance. So part of the level setting I want to introduce you to is to just affirm that the recognition of climate and COVID, but particularly climate crisis and psychology, emotional responses, grief, anxiety, overwhelm, polarization, all of that has really hit the public consciousness. So this is just a random sampling of articles that came out in earlier this year within a very short span. It was I think this was from March, April or so, and it was, just a random group. So at any given time, I can guarantee you that every single day, there is an article that's coming out somewhere in the world about linking climate crisis and psychology. And so this is happening. And I've been working on this intersection for 30 years. When I had my own trauma experience learning about climate change and environment when I was 18. And so at that time, no one was making these connections. So this is where we are now. And this is actually a good thing. This is a positive thing, because it gives us a language and a framework and a way to kind of make sense of the work we do and why it's so hard, and what can we do differently, and what are some tools that we can make use of. So I like to share this slide as well, because it's really important to me to signal other people working in this space, and especially women, who have been, working alongside and with me, and there's many, many others. But I just want to call out to, there's Caroline Hickman in the UK, who's just a brilliant climate psychologist who does a lot of work with young activists, like, people in their teens and early 20s. She's been a practicing psychotherapist for many years. Leslie Davenport is in Tacoma, Washington, who is a climate psychologist and a clinician and a psychotherapist, who has 2 books coming out about how to communicate with young people. And I think one is for parents and one is for educators. We've got Wendy Greenspun in New York City, who's been leading workshops at Columbia University for graduate students who work on climate change and looking at emotional resilience. Lise Van Susteren, who you may know, who has a new book called, I think it's called Emotional Inflammation. Lise has been a climate activist for many years now and is a psychiatrist. And Britt Ray, who is a younger author, journalist, science communicator, who has a new book coming out. And I want to highly recommend Britt's, she's got a newsletter called Generation Dread that you can subscribe to. And it comes out pretty often, and it's just full of resources. So this is a really dynamic and really exciting field. And I'm hopeful that you can, I'm sure that there's Canadians. I'm not as dialed into the Canadian network, but I can guarantee you there are climate psychologists and psychologists wanting to work with you all over the country. So go out and find them and partner with them. So I want to also introduce you to this new initiative, which I'm going to be running through. Some of the work is coming from Project Inside Out. So Project Inside Out is an initiative that actually started since I last have communicated with you, Kathy. It's a hub, it's a resource hub that we just launched about a month ago. And the whole point of Project Inside Out is how to take some insights and best practices that are more used in psychology and translate them to people working on the front lines of climate change and environmental action. And so you can go to projectinsideout.net and check that out after this session. And sign up for the newsletter. And my hope is that you'll find a lot of really great resources and tools on the website. So that's just kind of some situating of some context here. And what I want to now talk about with you is some of the things that I've observed with those working on climate change that see if this resonates with you. So there tends to be, I noticed a few years ago that there tended to be this kind of hope and despair thing happening, this like conversation that will not go away. And I keep waiting for it to go away, and it's persisting. This whole idea of, should we feel despair or should we feel hope? And what I want to suggest right off the bat is that it's not very psychologically coherent to think in terms of despair or hope. So if you talk to any, maybe there's some psychologists, I would imagine, in this group right now, and it would be awesome to hear from you, because if you ask a practicing psychologist, should I feel despair or should I feel hope? They will likely say to you, well, what about feeling both? And why does it have to be an either or? And why do we have to create these kind of, distinctions? And so that's what one of the things I want to offer to you tonight is to really blow up this whole binary of hope and despair, and to see it as much more complex and nuanced, going right back to the musician who beautifully set the stage, where she said it's really all about, it's about all of our feelings that we have. And we also have a tendency to manage our anxiety and to manage our just terror, frankly, about what's happening in the world. We have this tendency to try to also think in black and white. So it's either the bad news and the doom and the gloom, or we have to push the solutions. We have to focus on what we can do. We have to stay positive, and we have to really lean in hard to the solutions. And this is the other thing that I want to suggest, is that this is itself a real dichotomy, or it's a false dichotomy. It's a false binary that we just have to put this to rest as well, because what we're talking about here is reality, which is very messy, very complicated, and very serious and really scary. So forget bad news. It's just, there's reality happening, and reality that is very troubling and really upsetting for a lot of people. And the reality that's happening is really threatening. It really threatens our status quo, and it really threatens our sense of who we are. And am I a bad person? But I love my car, and I love my oil generated whatever, and I like to fly, and does that make me a bad person? And what happens is what we call the bad news is actually, it's really traumatic. It's really hard stuff. And so then we think, oh, we got to get away from that and just focus on positivity and solutions. Well, that kind of makes sense, and I understand where I bet that many people in this call resonate with that, and I understand that. But the truth of the matter is that people can join you more effectively and better with the solutions if we can stay and hang out with like what's hard and what's challenging and what's threatening and where we actually are and what's coming up for us. So I want to invite us to put this bad news and solutions thing aside. And if I, was fancier, this would be like dissolving, exploding, whatever. So just imagine that happening. So we often feel like we have to cajole and convince and persuade and incentivize and trick and champion and cheerlead people on the issues that matter most. Now, I can't see you all right now, but let me just see if I can. Show of hands, who resonates with this, who feels like they have to convince and persuade, right? Like, does that resonate for you? So I want to yes. So I'm with you. I'm a change maker too. I feel that way too. I want to convince you but I'm not going to try to convince you of something. I'm going to offer you a perspective, and you can see how it resonates with you, how it makes sense for you. What if there's a different way to trying to convince and persuade people? So here's something that's really wise, is that people don't resist change, they resist being changed. So here's a clue to what this work is all about, which is that when we approach people with the intention of changing them, with the intention of pushing our agenda on them, that is not actually very effective. It actually is not very relational. It's understandable, but it is not very effective. And this has been found by, a lot of people, especially some of you know that I'm very influenced by the public health sector, and especially people who work in the field of motivational interviewing, which I believe CCL has been engaging with. I was introduced to motivational interviewing by a climate activist who is a psychologist in Cambridge, UK, Rosemary Randall, who founded Carbon Conversations. She founded Cambridge Carbon Footprint, which was an organization where they would go out and have people calculate their footprint, but instead of just saying, "Oh, look at you, you have a big effing footprint," she would guide people in a conversation and say, "Well, okay," she would use the techniques from motivational interviewing, and all she had to do was introduce that to me, and it just completely changed my entire outlook on climate change work, because people resist feeling changed, but we do not resist change itself. So this led me to think a lot about, okay, what are the implications of that? What kind of change maker am I? And what kind of change maker are the people that I'm working with? Like, I started to pay attention to noticing the tendency to to kind of tell and sell and pitch and moralize and so forth. So I want to just share with you, run through with you some kind of types of change makers. And if you go to Project Inside Out, there's a tool. Have you done it, Kathy? Not to put you on the spot.
No, sorry.
It's all right. You don't have to say it like, but it's a quiz, and you can go on Project Inside Out and kind of see, where are you? What kind of change maker are you? So just notice as I talk about these four, see what comes up for you. And if you can throw into the chat as I'm going through these, what resonates with you, if you see yourselves as one of these. So writing is when you rely on making the moral and ethical case for why something is the right thing to do, and that it's on you to be the fixer. So this is like in motivational interviewing, they call this writing. So, it's the right thing for you to, vote this way or do that, or it's very kind of finger pointy, which is coming from our love and passion for the earth, but it's like has a real kind of writing, moralizing quality to it. We've got the educator. I'm an educator, so I need to give people the information, and maybe some of you are invited to give presentations or give talks, or come to a community group or whatever, and you might be thinking, okay, I need to tell them what the deal is. I need to tell them like how serious climate crisis is, and you know what, like people know. So we think that we got to lay on the urgency, because the urgency is going to somehow magically, if people really get how absolutely catastrophic what's going on, that somehow we're going to like magically say, oh, you know what, like this is super serious and just sign me up. What can I do to help? Well, it's a lot more complicated than that. And think about what I said earlier, that information is emotional. Information, what we call the bad news, information and reality is actually very emotional, right? So we have that kind of response. So educating is a very, very important part of the picture here, but we need to be thinking about how we educate and the ways in which we show up as educators, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So cheerleading is, who resonates with being a cheerleader? Kathy. So cheerleading is a way of managing our own stress. It's a way of managing our own anxiety, which is, and it's very temperamental. So some people do this more than other people, but it's like, I have to keep things really positive and inspiring and make sure that you feel inspired and keep it all really upbeat. And so it's just kind of like, you know, it's a little manic, like, it can be have a quality of feeling like you're not being real, you know, but it's very understandable. And I have to say, there's been some really unfortunate messaging in the climate sector over the past few years that really bothers me, which is we have to focus on the solutions, and it's very solution oriented. And, you know, a lot of people interpret that, I think, incorrectly, that to focus on solutions means you have to keep it positive because people are going to turn off if you're more real and down to earth. So spoiler alert, we need to be more real and down to earth with people. But, you know, I want to just acknowledge that there's this kind of quality or tendency to be a cheerleader. So just, you know, signal, chat, whatever, like if you resonate with which one of these you feel describes you. And the fourth is a guide. And a guide is actually really, really hard to pull off. I shouldn't say that. It actually isn't hard to pull off. I mean, what I mean to say is being a guide when the stakes are high, when the issues, there's so much at stake, and when we care so deeply, being a guide can be really tricky. It can be challenging, but we can do it, and we can develop the skills to do it, and we can do it as a community. And that's where I want to really spend some time and focusing on what does it mean to be a guide. So a guide is when you spend more time asking questions and you spend more time listening to where the other person is coming from, and you actually really bring curiosity and compassion and empathy into your interactions with every single person that you interact with about climate change. Every single person that you interact with, that you bring a quality of, you know, I see that you are doing the best that you can right now. You know, that you bring that quality of recognizing that, you know, people may be very stressed out, might be feeling really triggered, really threatened, that there's a lot that could be going on with people. Just taking a look at the chat just to see where we are with it. Yeah. So I just want to say, you know, it's really, and thank you, Heather, for posting the Rosemary Randall. That's awesome. I just want to say that don't feel bad for not being more of a guide. And I don't want anyone to feel bad for being a writer, a cheerleader, or an educator. It makes total sense that that's what we do. So I want to make sure that that's very clear, that I'm not like, I'm not being a change maker. I'm not like shaming change maker styles. But what I am doing is I'm drawing attention to the ways that we show up, because the only way we can change is by drawing attention to it and being more conscious and mindful of what we're doing, and bringing that same level of curiosity and compassion to ourselves. Say, okay, like, wow, like I know I'm so stressed. I'm really freaking out. I'm feeling really desperate, and I really want people to change, you know, and to be able to really bring that kind of attention to yourself and say, okay, so I'm feeling that way. It's hard for me to be present, you know, and I have an opportunity to grow and to evolve, which we all do. So, you know, the way that I see this work is as an opportunity really for all of us to sort of so I'm going to offer a reframe, which is that we all have an opportunity right now to really evolve and to develop as human beings in a way that's really challenging, but we can do it. And so that's my frame that I offer to you, is how can I grow and develop along these lines? It's not going to all happen on this workshop. I'm sorry to say, but I think that this can be a good starting, and this can be a good step for you in that direction. So what I want us to do now is I want us to spend some time on something that is very deceptively simple, but really powerful. And it's called the 3 A's. And this is one of the ways we move in this direction, which is to spend time with what are the anxiety that the people that you're working with might be, and when I say working with, I mean lobbying or seeking to engage or wanting to get on board or, partner with in some way. What are the anxieties that might be there for them when it comes to whatever kind of bill or policy or solution or initiative that you are seeking to advance? And ambivalence is where are people feeling in conflict? Where are people feeling pulled in very competing directions? It can be kind of like a double bind, like, well, I care about the planet and I care about the earth and I want my children to have, all of that, but that, so it's like, where are people feeling really in conflict and feel those double binds and those dilemmas? And then the aspiration is where are they, like, where do you sense their aspiration is? Like, is it about feeling being recognized or valued or making a difference or having an impact? What are the aspirations that might be going on with the stakeholders that you are seeking to engage with? So we've got anxiety, ambivalence, and aspiration. And these three A's are really like a code for you to start to tune into before you go into your interactions, during these interactions, and after the interactions that you're having, including the communications that you craft. You can do this in a whole variety of media. You can do it in writing or whatever, but we're going to focus right now on interactions that you might be having. So we're going to go into breakouts, and I would like you to have the first breakout will be pairs. And I want you to first identify who would be a stakeholder that you are focusing on right now or wanting to engage with in some way. It could even be someone in your life, a friend or whatever. It could be a representative, a policymaker. But I want you to reflect on an individual and what do you imagine might be the anxieties, the ambivalence, and the aspirations that are evoked by climate change and climate action. And I'd like you to each take, have about 7 minutes to share. So I'm just checking on time. We've got a good amount of time. So why don't we take 15 minutes for you to be in your pair? And what I'd like you to do is ensure that each person really does have like equal amount to reflect and share. So you can maybe take turns deciding who goes first and kind of let it reflect. And I want you to talk about those 3 A's, but also I think that's it for now. And notice maybe what it's like to talk about those A's. But we're just going to hang out with what might be the experience of the others that you are seeking to engage with. And notice what comes up for you when you're doing that. So are there any questions?
I'm ready when you're ready. And you might be put into a session, Renee. So I don't know what you want to do there. What are your thoughts before I push people into breakouts?
I do not want to be in a pair. So
Okay.
maybe you can put us in a pair, or I'll just
Okay. Everybody just get up and walk around for a minute while I configure this. Just take like a 1 minute, 2 minute break while I make sure this works. So just wanted to be clear on the instructions. Thanks. It'll just be 2 minutes.
okay. Oh, okay. Let me put that slide up.
Renee, I have a question.
Yes.
My name is Cheryl. Are these the A's that, like the anxieties, the ambivalence, and the aspirations that we have somebody in mind who we want to talk about climate change to? Is that what you're referring to? Or our own anxieties, ambivalence, and aspirations?
Right now we're focusing on the other.
Thank you.
Renee, can you talk a little bit more about ambivalence and give some more examples, please?
So ambivalence is about where people feel really stuck in dilemmas. So it's the yes, but. Yes, but. So let's see.
Okay, that's helpful to think yes, but. Okay.
I was just trying to think of a specific example of, in your world, but
Well, it could be something like, I don't like the fact that I have a SUV, but I have, 2 kids and a dog.
Yeah, exactly. So you can relate that to, lifestyle stuff, or you could relate it at the policy level.
Can you say a little more about anxiety?
Anxiety could be, what anxieties does this bring up? So take a bill, take a policy that you're working on. It's super complicated title what you shared, but the super complicated one. Carbon tax version of so what anxieties might that evoke for the person that you're seeking to engage on this? And just kind of hang out with that and just kind of imagine either what you've heard or what you imagine the anxieties get evoked. And it's good to pick something that you think is like so positive and so obvious that we need to do. It's good to pick something like that so that you can spend some time kind of imagining, okay, what anxieties might this actually be evoking and bringing up for someone.
The rooms are ready.
Okay.
And if anybody's orphaned, we'll put you in a room after. So, okay, you ready? Here we go. Wish me luck.
So I know I kind of rushed through the 3 A's pretty quickly. Want to take some time, take a few minutes and just hear from some groups. How was that? What did you learn? Who would like to share?
I can't share, Renee. I wasn't in a group. I just got here. I'm in Victoria and I blew it by an hour.
Okay, let's hear from a pair.
I can start if you wish, just to get it going, Renee.
Why don't you hold back just a minute and see if there's someone else who can share?
Okay, it's Liz in Toronto. I'm going to share my partner, Laura. He was quite easily elected. And he seems to, during the election process, he was saying how his number 2 priority is climate, but everything about him screams like fossil fuels. And he's even seems to be a climate denier, even worse. So he's, that's what Laura's got as her MP.
Where's the ambivalence, would you say?
The ambivalence is that he seemingly, he campaigned saying that the climate was his second priority, but he feels like that the jobs are important, and that Canada only represents 2% of emissions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the anxiety, it sounds like the anxiety is about jobs and job loss and wanting to protect people.
Yes.
Okay. And how about your partner? Who are you with?
Laura, this is what she was telling me. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then the last one, so what he's motivated by is votes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he needs to appeal to the east side of the riding, which is the one that's closest to Alberta, because that's the more conservative people on that side. And those are the ones who elected him primarily. But Laura also thinks that he was elected just because of the Conservatives got the vote out more than everybody else. So that's all I got to say.
So in doing this, in exploring these 3 A's, did you notice anything, or
Yeah, I noticed that we were doing the typical thing that we do as environmental activists, and seeing like speaking about the frustration of this person. Like he's a climate denier. He says one thing when he's campaigning, but then he's doing something else. So very us and them feeling. That's what I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Liz. Let's hear from another pair who would like to share what came up, what might have surprised you. What did you notice? Heather?
Sure. One thing that we noticed that just kind of happened by surprise was that we were talking about, my person was the mayor of Nanaimo, and we're thinking about making a change to stop putting natural gas in construction. And we talked about ambivalence, which was giving us just some of the sense of wanting to do the right thing and make our community be a leader. And yet at the same time, maybe the worry about competition and not being competitive with other communities. If we, maybe businesses wouldn't want to build there if it was going to be more expensive. And that really led naturally for my partner, the other Laura, into aspirations in terms of, less competitive maybe for certain businesses, but at the same time, maybe that becomes the place everyone wants to live because it's so modern and green and environmentally friendly, and everyone was going to want to move there, and that's actually their advantage. So I thought it was neat that the ambivalence actually tied so closely into the aspirations.
Yeah, they're all very interrelated, basically, because ambivalence can also bring up people's anxieties. Ambivalence is also signaling where people have aspirations, so they're all quite related. Yeah, and who is does your partner want to share?
Hi, Renee. Yeah, we had a great conversation, and the piece that I would love to share is, I come from a business background, so I know the business side pretty well. I'm now pivoting away from that and into sustainability, but I feel like I know it pretty well. So it was surprising to me that when you get into a really small group, like a one-on-one, and just start talking through this, that it opens up things that you hadn't really thought about before. And the one for me was on the anxiety. So we talked about, for business people that if you were to go down, let's say, become a green leader and set all these great bold goals, you might be afraid that you're changing the focus, particularly coming out of COVID. Are you really putting your focus in the right place, or should it be all on the employees and keeping the business alive? There might be anxiety about the investment you might be making. But the other one that came up just in talking to Heather is the idea that would there be anxiety about the fact that you might be appearing to be callous because you're now putting investment into this other area, when in fact you should be just focusing on the employees. So would the employees, or maybe even the customers and so on, see that as callous, that your focus should be on the business, keeping the business alive and getting those furloughed employees back on the payroll, et cetera, versus taking on some new highfalutin green goal? And I hadn't thought of it that way before, but in talking to Heather, it just came naturally. So thank you, Heather. And thank you, Renee.
Yeah. So I want to really underscore what you just shared, Laura, and emphasize that, like, why we're doing this, and the key to doing this is that it's incredibly important, and I would say even essential, for you to be able to extend yourselves more than you normally would, and to really imagining and leaning in and listening to what those anxieties or concerns might be, even if you don't agree, and even if you feel like it's irrational, or whatever beliefs or opinions or judgment you might have about that. It doesn't matter. What matters is that your ability to demonstrate to those that you are seeking to communicate with that you understand and are open to acknowledging what those anxieties and the ambivalence might be, is what's going to gain you actual traction and currency. So this translates into, ways that we have these interactions, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, where I think it's it's a powerful practice to do this with someone or with yourself, but ideally in conversation with another person, because it's in conversation that we learn and discover new things. It's just what happens when we have a space to talk things out. But to do that before you go in or design your approach with a particular stakeholder, and then there's how you actually are in the interaction, where you're leading more with asking questions, and you're acknowledging very explicitly and very openly, I can imagine you might be feeling X, or I hear that you're feeling that, or this, and to be able to explicitly acknowledge where the other person's anxieties and ambivalence and aspiration are, will actively disarm the defenses that tend to come up and sort of put up a wall. That what we're wanting to actually be in interaction. We're wanting to be in relationship. And so the 3 A's is just sort of it's like a tool or an exercise to remind ourselves to step out of our mode, our right, wrong, what Liz, I think, was speaking to be able to step out of that. But it's really not easy at all. It's really not. It's a practice. It's something that we continue to bring into the work we do. But I'm telling you that this is the number one thing that we need to be doing as climate activists right now. And it doesn't mean that we're not fighters and we're not agitators and we're not pushing. And I'm not suggesting that at all. But I'm saying that when a vital part of moving climate action forward, in addition to the agitation and the really making a stand, is being able to demonstrate that you're trustworthy, that you are trustworthy, that you understand and appreciate where the other might be struggling and might be hung up. So that's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about being a guide. So I want to just run through just a few more slides, and then we can open things up again into conversation, into discussion. So guiding, we talked about cheerleading, educating, and writing. And what I'm saying is that being any one of those things on their own is not going to get you where you want to be. You will not get where you want to be by being only an educator, by being only a writer and only a cheerleader. But guiding is a way of sort of bringing all of that together. And guiding is not about fixing and solving and persuading and convincing and all of those things. Guiding is really about relationship, and it's really thinking about the quality of the relationship. And it's about engaging with the complicated and messy feelings and reactions and reactivity that people might have about jobs, about votes, about this, about that. And it's engaging very explicitly with where the other person is at. And I think you all know this. I think I'm not saying anything that is rocket science or that you've never heard before. I'm just simply reminding us of how vital it is with issues that are charged and polarizing, to demonstrate that you actually have empathy and understand where the other person might be, and that you're open to having a conversation or an interaction that moves things forward. And the other thing about guiding is it's really coming from the spirit of offering. So, something I've learned from my mentors in motivational interviewing is that you come in. Motivational interviewing was created by clinicians who are working with people who are dying, who have addiction, who have chronic health issues, who absolutely, if they don't make a change in their life, they will have very serious consequences or fatality. So the stakes are high in that world. And so they've learned that it doesn't work to come in and say, you need to do this, and I think you should do that, and don't you care, and don't you care about your family, and don't you care that you're gonna, about the effect you're having on other people and about your body. And it's rather, look, we're partners. I get that you don't want to do this, and you probably don't want to be here right now. Would you be open to hearing some different perspective? Would you be open to hearing if what I have to say or have to offer? So it's really about meeting someone where they are, and then offering your expertise, your insight, your education, in that context. So the Project Inside Out has these 5 guiding principles that we talk about, which are like these levers that we can be using in our climate work. And I'm not going to go into each one in depth, but basically they're about attuning to your people, like really tuning into who it is that you are working with, but also tuning into yourself, tuning into where you are. Revealing is being compassionate truth tellers. Revealing is about telling and communicating about what's happening, but to be able to acknowledge and say, these are complicated issues. These are hard issues, that, it's a more emotionally intelligent approach. Convening is what CCL is really big on, which is really like harnessing and leveraging the power of conversation and convening people together. And equipping is giving people the tools that they need to be effective and successful. So you're offering yourself as a resource and as a guide. And sustaining is going beyond the election, the next cycle, but really, how do you build relationships over time? And so really the main kind of point here is, what does our work look like through the lens of being guides? And guiding is not it's not wimpy. You know, guides are can be very powerful, but guides have a certain kind of mindset. It's a certain kind of attitude that we bring to our work. So think about just imagine what it would feel like. I am a guide, you know, versus I'm a, you know, an educator, or I'm a writer. Like, just notice what it's like to imagine your work through the lens of being a guide. And guiding is also a skill set. So it's an attitude, but there's also very specific practices that we can be doing as guides. So, you know, and I really want to encourage you all to, you know, these practices exist, right? They're out there in the world. So, you know, motivational interviewing, or there's a lot of similar approaches. You know, there's all kinds of work on, you know, being more effective conversations and empathy and emotional intelligence. But, you know, there are resources and tools out there for the practice of this. And I learned by going to motivational interview trainings. You know, I went to trainings to learn, and I was the only person there who was doing climate work. You know, everyone else was doing clinical work. Well, once you're in an MI motivational interview training, you'll just be blown away, because you'll just be like, oh my God, this sounds like my experience as a climate activist, where I'm like going to people and trying to get them to change. And so there's real resources there to draw on that we can take advantage of. So there's empathetic or empathic listening. There's, you know, ways of working with people's resistance, which in motivational interviewing is called rolling with resistance. There's supporting the other person's autonomy. This is very high level stuff. And it's offering information, advice, and guidance as an offering. So you can try that going forward and say, would you be open to, do I have your permission to share this with you? Like, just asking permission is really, really powerful before you offer your perspective or information or point of view. So through the lens of guiding, kind of climate action as a guide, you're really focusing more on establishing relationship with people. That's the emphasis. What is the quality of the relationship? You are coming alongside the other person. You're not pushing and talking at them. You're seeing the other person as someone who has strengths, who appreciates choice, who wants to be treated with respect and non-judgment. You are calm and you are curious about their reality, their dilemmas, their anxieties, and you have important information to offer. So that's really sort of the essence of what it looks like through this lens of guiding, is that first and foremost, it's really about the quality of the relationship. And in order to do that, you need to be grounded in those 3 A's. You need to be tuned into those 3 A's. You need to really develop your muscle for empathizing and trying to understand where they are at, and by drawing them out, by evoking, by asking questions, by using reflective listening. So you might be thinking, what are you talking about? You know, this sounds like not a very effective approach to climate action. And it is, because the voice of your stakeholders is key. It's more important than your voice. So the more that you're able to get stakeholders to express their relationship with the issue, the more you can get them to articulate their ambivalence, their dilemmas, the more you're able to acknowledge what those are and to show that you understand and that you have empathy, but that you have a different, another way to look at this. It's way more important than your voice. They should be doing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not about having your voice mainly in the room, it's theirs. And so just noticing time here, I'm just going to wrap up with this theme about ambivalence, and want to suggest that ambivalence is actually, in some ways, I would say the most important part of doing climate work right now, is that people have ambivalence. Ambivalence is where people feel like they are in a double bind. To you, you might not think it's a double bind. You might not see it that way. It might be very frustrating to you. But for a lot of people, they feel stuck. They feel pulled in different directions, where they want to care for the planet and the earth, but they also feel deeply invested or indebted into jobs, into economy, into, whatever it was raised just a minute ago, identity. I'm going to be seen as callous. I'm going to be seen in this way or that way. That's where there's ambivalence. So the more you can draw out and get people to really articulate that, you become a guide and a partner with others. So ambivalence is a normal step on the road to change. It's a normal part of doing this work. And so what this means in the context of climate work is that we need to be better at drawing out and nurturing context where people can actually talk through. And that means that people need to trust you, which means you need to demonstrate that you understand where they're coming from first and foremost, before you say a word about whatever solution or initiative that you are pushing. So it's really not about how well you understand, it's really showing it very explicitly. And one of the most powerful ways of showing that you understand is by doing reflective listening. And maybe we can do, a subsequent workshop at some point just on reflective listening, which is really can be tricky to do, but it's when you repeat what you reflect back what you hear the other person saying as a statement. So it's not, I hear you saying, or are you saying this, but you literally are just saying, so jobs are absolutely front and foremost of your mind right now, especially with COVID and with the economic devastation. It's just like all you can think about right now. That's an example of reflective listening, where you're just reflecting what the other person has said, and you're demonstrating that you've heard it, and then they can calm down enough to elaborate, and then you can start to have an actual conversation. And reflective listening really applies to all aspects of our work and our relationships. So I know it's sort of a lot and it's high level, but my hope is that this has been enough to sort of inspire and invite you to think about your work coming from this place of trying to lean in more than you may normally do to where people are feeling tied up in knots, and to see how you can be a guide and a partner in sort of untangling those knots, and in really emphasizing the ability to demonstrate your understanding of where they are before you come in and try to push what it is you're pushing. So I'm gonna pause and see if there are, I haven't been checking the chat, but see if there's any questions or clarifications. Reflections. Cheryl?
Hi, Cheryl, yeah. I think with ambivalence as well, I think we also have our own ambivalence, right? I mean, I'm very much committed to taking action on climate change, but I also fly home to Vancouver to be with my near 80-year-old mother when it's not COVID. Not that I fly all the time, but it's one of those things that I feel horribly guilty about. And it's like, so there's little things like that so I find are probably helpful to share with other people who are also feeling ambivalent, to know that, I'm not on my high horse telling them what to do, but I also, feel conflicted sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really important piece of this. which is to be, and actually for Project Inside Out, the second guiding principle is reveal. And the reveal principle is about being real and human and vulnerable and complicated in how we show up, and basically saying, I struggle with these things too. I'm not perfect. I'm dealing with ambivalence as well. I can completely like as much as we can do that, we actually do everyone such a service, because then we become more humanized and we give everyone permission to be kind of where we are. And then there's that builds the traction for a more meaningful interaction that can lead to change. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. David?
Renee, I would like you to speak more, if you could, about the process of establishing that you're trustworthy. Because in so many of these conversations, as I'm sure it's so, you have so much to say when you're talking to someone. You have so much you want to communicate. You're so passionate about it, and it really can overwhelm the other person. So you don't want to not be able to transmit what you came there to say, but doing it in a way that they can actually listen to. So could you talk more about that, establishing that you're trustworthy?
Well, I was going to have us do an activity that where you reflect on someone you trust in your life and what makes you trust them. So maybe you can do that at some point, do it with a partner or do it later, but think about someone you trust in your life and what are the attributes that make you feel like you can really trust that person. And then imagine bringing those qualities into the interactions that you're having with others. So one of the basic elements of trust is that I need to know that you, one, are able to actually listen and attune to me. Otherwise, there's no trust. So I need to know that you will hear me and see me and kind of register who I am and what I'm struggling with and what I'm wrestling with is fundamental. And you need to be able to demonstrate that very explicitly. You need to show it. And the way that you show it is you reflect back, you literally say what you hear the other person saying. Or you can, as I mentioned, you can do it in writing if it's a newsletter or, communication, but you have to show it. It's not enough to be like, yeah, I totally get it. No, you have to say jobs come first for you. So you have to, that's the way to really help establish the trust. And then the other important thing about trust building is that you need to really disarm the tendency to be defensive by acknowledging that you respect the other, however you can to convey respect of their own autonomy, that you are not here to try to change the other person. If you are there to change the other person, because this is the paradox of lobbying, because you are there to lobby. But, we can't change anyone. What we can do is we can have conversations that lead to a new level of understanding and, solving things together. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to be said about that, but I think that the trust piece that's what this all is about. This is all in service of how do we build trusting relationships.
So often when I'm going on speaking with politicians or bureaucrats, I don't feel that they're trustworthy. Mm-hmm. I've had so many times when I've been betrayed again and again, and it's systematic. It's built into the institutions, and it's not even so much those individual people, but that they're so lost within a paradigm of ideas and actions that they think it's okay to lie to your face, to change you. They think it's all fair in love and politics. So I am convinced that they are not fundamentally trustworthy
Well, I'm not
based on their action.
right. I'm not suggesting we go around and just trust everyone kind of indiscriminately. I'm saying that trust has to be earned. And what I'm emphasizing is how do we show up in a way that fosters our trustworthiness? So I think that's really key. So Kathy, do we need to wrap now?
Unfortunately, yes. We're just naming and taming so many things in our minds and in the work that we do. This is so rich. I hope this fosters more discussion and more self-reflection. I hate to say that it's over, but it is winding up, and you've shifted me again, and I feel you're shifting our organization. We've got some world-changing conversations to have in the next 2 to 3 months, and this is really going to help us. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Renee. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
Thanks for having.
Yeah, do you want to say one last closing comment? And then I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to answer any questions people may have about lobbying. So it's going to become very informal for about 5-10 minutes, but thank you so much.
I just want to thank you again for inviting me. And I know that a lot of what I shared was pretty high level, but I'm not a big fan of just giving people steps. I feel like what I can do is offer a perspective, and you'll have the slides and the video, but that you can see kind of what does this make sense for you in your own kind of experience in your own life. And I encourage you to continue to build skills. Check out Project Inside Out, check out motivational interviewing resources, other kind of conversation resources, and really draw on each other. I would really encourage you as a community to really practice with each other and draw on each other to build this capability. So thank you. And I'm really honored again and excited about what you all are up to, and thank you. Grateful.
Thank you. Does everybody want to unmute your microphones and say thank you? And then for those of you who have any questions about lobbying, I will be here. Thank you so much, Renee. So everybody unmute if you wish and say your thanks.
Thank you.
Renee.
That was really good.
Thank you.
Renee, very excellent session.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Renee. Learn something new every time we speak.
Thanks.
Thanks, Renee and gang. It's Andre. I tuned in kind of late, but it was great.
Beautiful.